if I handed you an organic apple and a conventional apple and told you to prove to me scientifically, right down to the cellular level, which one is actually better for your body, you probably couldn't.
No, you really couldn't. And surprisingly, neither can most scientists.
Right. Because we see that organic label in the grocery store, and it acts almost like a placebo.
Mm.
You know, we feel healthier just putting it in the cart.
Yeah, there's definitely a psychological comfort there.
Exactly. But if we pull back the curtain on the actual agricultural science, the diagnostic landscape comparing these two farming methods is, well, it's incredibly murky.
It is.
So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're exploring the massive Handbook of Organic Food Safety and Quality.
It's a fantastic, really comprehensive text.
It really is. And our mission today is to cut through the supermarket marketing hype and clinically evaluate the actual measurable differences between organic and conventional foods.
Right, getting away from the pastoral imagery on the packaging.
Yeah, we're looking past the happy little barns on the label to understand the complex physiological trade-offs, involving nutritional value, chemical exposure, and microbial risks.
Which is so important for medical students and health professionals to grasp.
Exactly. So let's unpack this. We all want to make informed choices based on clinical realities, but what does the science actually say is happening inside the food?
Well, answering that requires looking past the broad assumptions. I mean, many people, even within the medical community, operate under this belief that the organic label automatically translates to a product that is, exponentially more nutritious.
Right, it'd be just packed with vitamins.
Yeah, and universally safer. But the agricultural realities detailed in this handbook reveal a far more complex picture.
Right.
We really have to examine the specific mechanisms of crop cultivation, disease management, and post-harvest physiology to understand what that label actually guarantees.
Okay, let's start with the biggest assumption then, the nutritional reality. Because, like you said, people buy organic because they believe it's going to lead to better measurable health outcomes.
Right.
But the direct human health studies on this seem surprisingly scarce.
They are very scarce, and the ones that do exist are often highly inconclusive.
Really?
Yeah. The handbook actually highlights a heavily debated epidemiological study. It compared the semen quality of Danish organic farmers to a control group of healthy men working for an airline company.
Wait, airline workers?
Yes. The initial hypothesis was that the organic farmers who were consuming a diet high in organic produce would exhibit significantly better reproductive health markers.
Okay, I can already see the flaws in that setup. I mean, if you're comparing rural farmers to airline workers, you aren't just comparing diets.
Exactly.
You're comparing entirely different environmental exposures. Airline workers are inhaling jet exhaust. They're dealing with disrupted circadian rhythms from travel.
Right. The shift work alone is a massive stressor.
Yeah, they're facing entirely different industrial stressors.
And that is the fundamental challenge of nutritional epidemiology. Confounding demographic factors make it nearly impossible to attribute any health outcome solely to the organic diet.
Because you can't isolate the variables.
Precisely. You cannot properly isolate the dietary variable from whether someone breathes clean country air or jet fuel fumes. So drawing a definitive clinical conclusion from that kind of data is just scientifically unsound.
So if epidemiological studies are too muddy, what happens when researchers just look at the food itself?
Well, that's where it gets interesting.
Right, because if standard nutritional panels like testing for basic vitamin C or protein levels, if they don't show a huge undeniable difference, how are we supposed to tell them apart?
It's a great question.
I was fascinated by the red skin potato study mentioned in the text. Researchers put together a sensory taste panel to see if people could actually taste the difference between organically and conventionally grown red skin potatoes.
And the results are very telling.
Yeah. The panel could reliably distinguish the organic potato wedges from the conventional ones, but only under one specific condition: the skins had to be left on.
Right. Once those skins were removed, the sensory differences completely vanished. The interior flesh of the potato tasted identical, regardless of the farming method.
Which tells us that the tangible impact of being grown organically is heavily localized to the plant's exterior.
Exactly. Botanically, the skin is the primary interface between the plant and its environment.
Makes sense.
It is the barrier where the plant interacts with soil microbes, insect pests, and weather conditions. So it makes complete biological sense that the most significant biochemical divergence between organic and conventional farming would occur in those epidermal layers.
Because that's where the plant is actively defending itself.
Precisely.
Okay, but because standard nutritional tests keep failing to show massive, sweeping differences across the whole plant, researchers in the organic sector have essentially had to create a new scientific dictionary.
They really have. They had to look beyond basic macronutrients.
Yet they developed entirely new frameworks to quantify what makes organic food unique. The Handbook introduces something called the inner quality concept, or IQC.
Developed by the Louis Bilk Institute, yes.
Right. And it shifts the focus away from basic reductionist chemistry and looks at the plant's overall life processes.
Right. So the IQC focuses on the balance between two fundamental biological imperatives in a plant growth and differentiation.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. In conventional agriculture, the heavy use of highly soluble synthetic nitrogen fertilizers pushes the plant strongly toward rapid growth. The cells expand quickly, and the plant gets big fast.
Like a growth spurt.
Exactly. But in organic agriculture, the nutrient availability from organic matter is usually lower, and it releases much more slowly.
So it's a slower burn.
Yes. This theoretically forces the plant to spend less energy on rapid expansion and more energy on differentiation.
And by differentiation, you mean?
Meaning the maturation of cells, the thickening of cell walls, and the development of complex secondary metabolites and flavors.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit hard to grasp. Measuring differentiation sounds incredibly subjective. You can't just put a plant's vitality on a scale.
No, you can't, which led to some very unique testing methods.
Yeah, the text mentions these alternative assessment systems that sound almost like science fiction, like biocrystallization.
That's a fascinating one.
They take an extract of the food, mix it with a copper chloride solution, and let it crystallize.
Yeah.
But I mean, how does mixing plant juice with copper chloride prove anything about the plant's health?
Well, the underlying mechanism relies on the complex organic molecules within the plant extract. Proteins, enzymes, and other macromolecules act as a structural scaffold.
Oh, I see.
As the water evaporates in a highly controlled chamber, these plant molecules dictate how the copper chloride crystals form and branch out.
So they're looking at the patterns.
Exactly. The researchers analyzed the visual patterns of the resulting crystals. The hypothesis is that an extract from a more vital or structurally complex plant will organize the copper chloride into more integrated, highly branched patterns.
Compared to a conventionally grown counterpart.
Right.
And then there is fluorescence excitation spectroscopy, which measures biophotons or delayed luminescence.
Yes, measuring light emission.
The text gives this wild example of measuring the delayed luminescence of hen's eggs. By looking at how the egg re-emits light, researchers could determine if the hens had access to natural light and forage outdoors.
As opposed to being kept in a conventional indoor battery cage.
Right. But, I mean, an egg remembering sunlight, that sounds dangerously close to pseudoscience. How is that physically possible?
I know it sounds esoteric, but it is actually grounded in photochemistry. Biological tissues, including the porphyrins in an eggshell, contain molecules that can absorb photons and then slowly release them over time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The structural and chemical composition of the egg, which is influenced by the hen's diet and environment, alters how that light is absorbed and re-emitted.
This is wild.
It is. However, we must view this through a strictly clinical lens. These methods, biocrystallization and biophoton emission, can consistently differentiate between organic and conventional samples in a lab setting.
So they're measuring a real physical difference.
Yes. But what's fascinating here is that their actual physiological implications for human health remain entirely unproven.
So we have a biomarker, but we have absolutely no idea what it's a biomarker for.
Exactly. We lack the controlled clinical trials necessary to demonstrate that a plant producing more complex copper crystals translates to improved cellular health or disease resistance in the human consuming it.
Right, it's a huge leap.
It requires rigorous investigation before we can make any actual health claims.
Okay, so if inner vitality and biophotons are too abstract to link to human health outcomes right now, we should pivot to something we can measure in parts per million.
Let's do it.
The chemical composition of the food. specifically the trade-off between synthetic pesticides and the plant's own natural defense chemicals.
Now, this provides much firmer ground for clinical risk assessment. The handbook emphasizes that organic food significantly reduces dietary exposure to synthetic pesticides.
Which is what most consumers care about.
Yes, and this is particularly crucial regarding organophosphate insecticides.
Right, let's break down why organophosphates are so concerning for our listeners. Because medically speaking, they are cholinesterase inhibitors.
Exactly.
In a biological system, cholinesterase is the enzyme responsible for turning off the signal in a nervous system. If you inhibit that enzyme, the nervous system keeps firing uncontrollably.
It leads to severe overstimulation.
Yeah, that's how it kills an insect, but that same mechanism poses severe neurological risks to humans, especially to the developing brains of children.
Absolutely. Avoiding those specific synthetic neurotoxins is a measurable, definitive clinical benefit of the organic diet.
Okay, but we must address a pervasive myth here. Organic farming is not a chemical-free endeavor.
Not at all. That is a huge misconception.
Organic farmers utilize a specific national list of allowed substances. The general rule is that synthetic chemicals are prohibited, but natural substances are allowed.
Right.
So they use biological pesticides like Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a naturally occurring soil bacterium that destroys the digestive tract of certain caterpillars.
Very effective, naturally derived.
But they also rely heavily on elemental sulfur and copper-based fungicides.
And that reliance on copper is a massive ecological bottleneck for organic farming.
Because copper doesn't degrade, right?
Exactly. It is an elemental metal, so it persists in the environment indefinitely.
Wow.
Conventional farmers use systemic synthetic fungicides. Those are absorbed into the plant's tissues to fight off diseases from the inside, like late blight in potatoes or downy mildew in grapes.
But organic farmers can't use those.
No, organic farmers cannot use those systemic synthetics. Their only defense is to coat the outside of the plant with heavy, topical applications of copper.
And then it rains.
Yes. Rain washes that copper off the leaves and directly into the soil. Over decades of organic farming, this copper builds up in the soil profile, creating severe toxicity for soil microorganisms.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of organic soil health.
It completely decimates earthworm populations. Agronomists are desperately researching ways to reduce copper dependency because it degrades the very soil biology that organic farming is supposed to protect.
That's a crazy trade-off.
Yeah.
And because organic plants don't have that invisible shield of systemic synthetic chemicals circulating in their veins, they're constantly subjected to low-level stress from pests and diseases.
They're on their own, biologically speaking.
Yeah, I visualize it like someone lifting weights without a spotter. Because the plant has to fight off the environmental stress all by itself, it builds up its own biochemical muscles.
I like that analogy. And for a plant, those muscles are phytochemicals.
Right.
The biochemical mechanism here is a direct stress response. Phytochemicals such as glycoalkaloids in potatoes or glucosinolates in broccoli are secondary metabolites.
So they don't produce them just for fun.
No, the plant synthesizes them specifically to defend against environmental threats. Whether an insect is chewing on a leaf or a fungal spore is attempting to colonize the stem.
And conventional crops don't have to work as hard.
Exactly. Conventional crops are protected by a chemical umbrella of synthetic pesticides. They experience significantly less stress, and consequently, they synthesize fewer of these defense compounds.
And then we end up eating those defense compounds. Higher levels of phytochemicals often mean more antioxidants, which, as we know, have widely documented cardioprotective and anti-inflammatory benefits for human cellular health.
It does. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a fascinating toxicological paradox.
How so?
Well, those phytochemicals are generally health-promoting for us, but the plant is not producing them for our benefit. The plant synthesizes them to be toxic to predators.
Oh, right.
You brought up glycoalkaloids in potatoes earlier. In low doses, they might offer some biological benefits, but in high concentrations, glycoalkaloids are acutely toxic to humans.
Wait,
Yes. They disrupt cell membranes and actually inhibit the very same cholinesterase enzymes we discussed earlier with the synthetic pesticides.
that is incredible. So the stress that induces beneficial antioxidants can simultaneously push the levels of natural plant toxins dangerously high.
It is a precarious biochemical balance.
So the plant is basically brewing its own natural pesticides,
Yeah.
and we are eating them. The very compounds making the crop robust could make it toxic if the farmer isn't careful,
Exactly right.
which naturally leads us to the other side of the organic farming equation. If you aren't using synthetic nitrogen fertilizers to feed the plants, you have to build soil fertility through natural biological systems.
Yes, which brings its own set of challenges.
Because that almost always means relying heavily on animal manure. And bringing raw animal waste into the food production cycle introduces an entirely different category of risk.
Acute biological hazards. The microbiological safety of organic produce requires intense scrutiny. When you apply animal manure to a field, particularly if the composting process was inadequate and failed to reach the temperatures necessary to kill pathogens,
You're spreading bacteria.
you introduce enteric bacteria directly into the crop environment. The primary threats being Salmonella, Campylobacter, and virulent strains of E. coli.
The handbook actually details a terrifying outbreak of a Shiga toxin producing bacteria called Citrobacter frundii.
Yes, a very serious case.
Epidemiology traced the infections back to sandwiches made with organically grown parsley that had been fertilized with swine manure. Let's explain what a Shiga toxin does medically.
Please do.
It physically enters human cells and halts protein synthesis, which leads directly to cell death. When this happens in the lining of your intestines, it causes severe bloody illness and can lead to permanent kidney failure.
It's devastating, and the parsley outbreak really illustrates the fragile farm-to-fork chain of infection.
Because it grows so close to the ground.
Exactly. If manure contains a high pathogen load and comes into contact with the edible portion of the crop, the danger is immense. Parsley grows very close to the soil surface, and crucially, it is almost always consumed raw.
So it completely bypasses the kill step of cooking.
Right.
So this highlights the central tension of the entire organic debate for me. Are we simply trading a long-term chronic chemical risk from synthetic pesticide exposure for an acute, immediate biological risk of severe food poisoning?
It's a valid concern, but the data offers a reassuring perspective on that specific trade-off.
Okay, good.
The handbook cites a comprehensive survey analyzing 3,200 samples of ready-to-eat organic vegetables. The microbiological analysis showed that organic produce generally maintains highly acceptable bacteriological quality.
So it's not actually covered in pathogens.
No, only roughly 1.5% of the samples tested positive for E. coli or Listeria, and no other major bacterial pathogens were detected. So the baseline risk of infection is statistically quite low.
But the risk remains present. And dealing with that risk post-harvest is a major hurdle for organic food processors.
A massive hurdle.
In conventional processing, ensuring that pre-washed, bagged spinach is safe usually involves a heavy chlorine wash. Chlorine is cheap, it rapidly destroys cell walls of pathogens, and it evaporates.
It's the industry standard.
But organic processing has extremely strict limits on chemical interventions to maintain the integrity of the food. Chlorine is heavily restricted or outright banned due to concerns about the formation of toxic chlorinated byproducts.
Correct.
So if chlorine is off the table, what natural intervention can strip salmonella off a delicate spinach leaf without destroying the leaf itself?
Processors are forced to utilize organic alternatives, which honestly often lack the efficacy of chlorine. They deploy physical treatments like ozone gas, UV irradiation, or washing the produce in organic acids.
And the text mentioned essential oils too.
Yes, there is significant research into using natural antimicrobials, specifically essential oils extracted from other plants.
But the text notes a massive downside to essential oils. While they are natural and antimicrobial, using them as a produce wash severely alters the taste and physically degrades the plant tissue.
It does.
How do essential oils melt a spinach leaf? That sounds crazy.
It comes down to cellular chemistry. Essential oils are highly lipophilic, meaning they interact strongly with fats and lipids. When applied to a leaf, they don't just target the bacteria on the surface, they also attack the lipid bilayer of the plant's own cell membranes.
Oh, wow. So they're breaking down the plant itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
They disrupt the cellular structure, causing the plant cells to leak their contents. The tissue softens, loses its structural integrity, and rapidly turns to mush.
That sounds appetizing.
Right. A processor might successfully eliminate the salmonella, but they render the produce completely unpalatable and unmarketable. It is a persistent food science challenge.
Okay, so given these unique microbial risks from manure and the severe limitations on the post-harvest chemical tools available to clean the food, how does the organic supply chain actually ensure the food on the grocery store shelf is safe?
They have to adapt standard industrial protocols.
Right.
The global gold standard for food safety is HACCP hazard analysis by critical control points.
Hmm.
The organic sector has adapted this into what they call organic HACCP.
Okay, so how is organic HACCP different?
Well, HACCP is a systematic, preventive approach. Instead of just testing the final product, processors map out the entire supply chain.
Like a flowchart.
Exactly. They look at the farm, the transport vehicles, the washing facilities, and the packaging lines, identifying the exact physical, chemical, and biological hazards at each step.
And those are the critical control points.
Right. They establish these specific steps where a hazard can be prevented, eliminated, or reduced to an acceptable level. Organic HACCP must manage all the conventional safety hazards, but it significantly expands the scope.
In what way?
It also establishes critical control points for authenticity and social or ethical values.
Because the organic label isn't just a safety standard. It is a brand promise. A consumer is paying a premium for a specific set of agricultural practices.
Exactly. If a consumer loses trust in the organic integrity of a product, the entire supply chain fails.
Right.
A prime example is managing the risk of genetically modified or GM cross-contamination.
Oh, because GMOs aren't allowed in organic.
Correct. If an organic cornfield is situated next to a conventional GM cornfield, the organic farmer must establish a physical buffer zone. Wind can easily blow GM pollen across the property line.
So how do they prove it's still organic?
A critical control point for authenticity might involve continuously running PCR DNA tests on the border rows of the organic crop to ensure no GM traits have integrated into the harvest.
Wow. Even if the corn is perfectly safe to eat, GM contamination destroys its value in the organic market.
Completely destroys it.
And the logistics of maintaining that fragile chain of trust across international borders are staggering. The text points out a startling regulatory discrepancy just regarding standard food safety temperatures.
Oh, the egg storage example.
Yes, the legally mandated safe storage temperature for eggs varies wildly across Europe, ranging anywhere from 5 degrees to 25 degrees Celsius, depending on the country.
It's a huge variance. And when basic conventional safety parameters fluctuate that dramatically across borders, building a rigorous, internationally unified, organic HACCP system becomes a monumental task.
I can imagine.
Guaranteeing both microbiological safety and ethical authenticity requires meticulous, continuous oversight at every single transfer point in the global supply chain.
So what does this all mean? Which brings us back to you, the listener, standing in the grocery store aisle.
Yeah.
The organic label is not a magic bullet for perfect health.
No, it really isn't.
It does not instantly mean the food is packed with double the vitamins. As we have explored today, it represents a complex, deeply interconnected agricultural trade-off.
Absolutely. By choosing organic, you are making a measurable decision to reduce your exposure to synthetic pesticides, particularly those neurotoxic organophosphates.
Which is a huge plus.
It is. And you are potentially gaining higher levels of naturally occurring phytochemical antioxidants because those plants were forced to defend themselves against environmental stress.
But on the flip side,
concurrently, you are relying on a supply chain that must meticulously manage natural microbial risks like enteric pathogens from composted manure without the highly effective safety net of conventional post-harvest chemical washes.
your food choices drive the agricultural market. Understanding these scientific mechanisms, the actual cellular and chemical realities, allows you to make purchasing decisions based on clinical facts rather than marketing aesthetics.
That's the most important takeaway.
To lock in what we covered today, I want to leave you with a brief medical and educational review exercise.
I love this.
Next time you are at the grocery store comparing an organic apple to a conventional one, ask yourself 2 questions based on our deep dive. First, how might the organic apple's struggle against pests have fundamentally changed its phytochemical profile under the skin?
A great biochemical question.
And second, considering the complex farm-to-fork journey we discussed, what specific critical control points had to be perfectly managed to ensure that apple is safe for you to eat raw?
Applying the theoretical science directly to a daily scenario is the most effective way to solidify the knowledge.
When you look at that apple, there is no simple X-ray to show you what is happening inside. The diagnostic landscape will always require critical thinking. But armed with the underlying physiology and chemistry, you can look past the label and understand the living, breathing reality of the food we eat. Keep questioning what's on your plate.